Hello there, Patricia here. As always, glad to be here. Today, I want you to ask the question like, if you were to put yourself on a pottery wheel and be, like, what piece of pottery would that crafter develop? Like, what would you look like? I know that seems like a crazy analogy, right? But this is about sharing your genius your way. That's what I really want to get into today. And before we jump in, please hit the thumbs up, the like button, and subscribe to make sure that this gets pushed out to other folks who could benefit from this conversation. And the conversation being, what does it look like? What does it mean to share your genius in your own way? And man, there's so many places to start. One of the books that I enjoy reading yearly, every couple of years, I tried to get to it. Once I got exposed to it, was book by Hendricks. I'll put the link to it in the, or yeah, I put a link to it in the in the description, and it really talks about how there's varying levels, and we could even be working and living in our in a way that's excellent, so that people really are like, oh, that gosh, they're really good at that. But when you get to the level of working in your genius and operating from your genius, it's like a whole other level, right? And so often we allow ourselves to get distracted from that super high level because people are like, oh, but you're really good at this. And so you're like, well, yeah, this is really good and it makes me a lot of money. So I'm going to go with what I'm really, really good at. And there's nothing wrong with doing things that you're really good at, but like, is that your genius? Like, what is it that only you can bring to the party? Like, when they're crafting on that wheel, I- I've taken a pottery class, but not the actual molding. It's more of like having something molded for me and then taking that piece and decorating it and all of that. But that actual shaping and how you could have this clay that when it starts out, it looks like nothing on this thing that's spinning, and how it can be developed into either this beautiful little tiny vase or this huge vessel. I'm like, it's just fascinating. The point being, everybody can be put on the pottery wheel of life, but not come out with the same results. No two pieces are exactly alike. Even when you try to shape them to be, closely aligned or similar, like no two pieces are exactly alike. And that's the point I always want to remind people when it comes to pursuing your business, your career, your interests, those things that lift you up and give you direction and purpose. Oh, absolutely give you purpose for how you pursue your life. Now, I will be honest and say, you know, I I'm a lawyer by training. I have, and I say that because I don't practice all the time. I still practice. My license is still active, but it's not my primary thing that I do. But I had always wanted to be a lawyer. Since 9 years old, I declared I was going to be a lawyer. No one in my family had ever done it. At that time, no one in my family had, trying to think, my uncle, but we weren't close, may have gone to college. But at that time, I didn't know anyone in my immediate family who had even pursued college, much less an advanced degree, and one as strenuous as a law degree. Never, had done that, but I decided that's what I wanted to do. And it's because I always said I wanted to be an advocate for people. I saw being a lawyer as being an advocate. It was not so much about, oh, well, lawyers make a lot of money and all of that type of stuff. It was about the empowerment peace. And I mention that now is because as I pursued, I did get to go to law school. It was not an easy route. There were challenges along the way, of course. Came out, practiced law, got to combine being a lawyer with being an advocate in the legislative process, which I loved, right? And marrying that, and still, I was very good at it, very, very good. But in that process of still developing, of still being molded, to recognize that my genius was this whole other thing related to that, but it's about the strategy and being able to identify issues in a short amount of time with potential options for resolution. That's the thing, and I couldn't make myself not do it if I wanted to, because that's just the way my brain operates. And it was so funny because a meeting I went to recently, I was being facilitated by an old friend and colleague of mine, and I was telling her thanks for, inviting me to be a part of this conversation because on the surface, I didn't belong in that room. On the surface, I don't run a nonprofit. I've served on a lot of nonprofit boards and I've been in leadership in them, of course. And I've done, work uh, with and for nonprofits. But this very specific topic that was being discussed, I had no experience with that. But her comment to me was so telling and yet another reminder of what my personal genius, and that she says, no, I knew with the people that were coming in, I wanted your strategy brain to be in the room. I knew you would have something to add to the conversation. Those were her unsolicited words. And it was just so powerful, yet again, for me to be reminded of that externally as validation, yes and no, but as a reminder, much more so as a reminder. Because sometimes when you're trying to operate in your genius, you're not getting support for it like you want to, or things don't seem to be working out. So it's just easier if you drop down to doing the things you're really good at, right? So other things that I'm really good at, I'm a really good lawyer. I'm really good at being an advocate in the legislative environment. But that doesn't bring me joy anymore because it's so messed up over there right now. There are ways that I want to be able to contribute to that process, but I know that it has to look different than it has, for 20 years, right? I'm a really good lawyer, but I know that that's not my day-to-day thing. When I can serve and be a advocate for someone who really needs that support, I'm there for it. But that's not my daily, where I want to be in my daily work and life at this point in time. As I was growing and developing, yes, it fed to this, to the things that I not just interested in, but wanting to be very purposeful about engaging in at this point in time in my life. All of that created this foundation for it and to build up for it and to utilize skills that, again, I know that I have and are and that I'm able to engage in that other people are not. Uh, for example, this here, speaking on camera and public speaking, period. I know that most people detest public speaking. They do not like it and are deathly afraid of it, right? I've been doing public speaking since I was 14 years old. I've literally been trained to do this. And coupled with that was this gift of writing and being able to express myself in the written word, not just for myself, but also to assume the voice of other people and write on their behalf. I never could have anticipated that being something I did. Again, with never having speech writing as a part of or as a title. I've never officially been a speechwriter for anyone. It became included in my other duties as assigned at very high levels. And so being able to take that strategy piece, that strategic thinking brain, the advocacy piece of speaking up, both verbally and in writing, and to be able to do so whether I'm standing live in front of a group or on camera, like those things pulled together have come to be the genius that I can operate from within. Not that I can, but that I do operate from within. And trying to make sure to manage that in a strong way that protects it. Now that's a challenge, right? Because the world and everybody in it will always say, oh, well, why aren't you doing this? But you were so great at that. Why aren't you doing that? And that can eat at our both our egos and, at our confidence, right? Kind of seemingly at two opposite ends, but at our egos, because it's like you've got someone building you up, like, oh, you're so good at this. Why aren't you doing it? So you can start, doubting, like, well, why am I not doing that? I probably should be doing that. But then it's also the confidence piece of, well, gosh, I'm not doing that. Why, maybe me pursuing doing this other work more deeply, is not the right thing. And this is part of that, doing the inner work to know who you are and where you are at any given moment. Because you know what? It doesn't look the same. Who I was as a professional 5 years out of law school is absolutely not who I became 10, 15, 20 years later. She was still there, but the growth and the development were in ways I never could have anticipated. If you had told me I was going to eventually be doing high level strategic work for organizations, advising executives, and helping women leaders to take on tough transitions in a way that so that they can be successful at their next level, I would have been like, you're crazy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a really good lawyer and I'm going to be a really good lobbyist. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a good leader. But even in that journey, there were signs because there I was being hired in the midst of that in administrative executive level roles because of the way that I thought and the way that I think and the strategy that I put into things, right? And so there are ways to make sure that you're developing who you are at those levels by first really owning it. What are the things that you would do and spend hours and get lost doing it and be like, oh, those will give you some uh, guideposts to that, right? There's lots of reflection work that can be done in that area. And that really bring you a lot of joy. Not just you, but also that's recognized by others at a whole other level. Not just, oh, you're so good at this, but hey, I really respect or I really appreciate you bringing X to the table because no one else was going to do that. Those are those keys, those are those signs, right? The reminder also that we do not all have the same abilities and skills. People are so fast to try and stick us all into a box because that's what, and I don't mean this in a facetious or insulting way, but that's what average people do, right? They're like, well, I'm just going to get to here. I'm either too scared or not interested in going beyond that. So I'm just going to stay at this level. And so they think that everyone else should stay at that level. I call it the crabs in the bucket mentality. Only that goes one step further. It's not just, oh, you got all these crabs in the bucket, but the crabs that are trying to get out, when they're trying to get out, the other crabs who are fine being there, they were literally trying to pull them down to keep them from getting out. It's the craziest thing. Go look it up. As if, so in life, it's as if people want to say, oh, well, we all kind of look, feel, same. That's not true. My my favorite phrase that I use a lot is we are not flat Stanleys, and not only because we're not one dimensional, we're multidimensional, but we also don't all have the same skills. We don't look the same. We don't act the same, and that is great. But when people are scared or don't know how to work with or acknowledge when other people are willing to push themselves and reach for that level of growth that maybe someone else is not ready to go there, if ever, then yeah, they can try to, put you inside that little box. And I always encourage people not to be kept in a box. Don't allow it. I have been known a time or two to tell someone, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that input, and this is where I stand. And it's funny because over time, I never really thought of myself as just this, oh, out there, but there would just be those moments where I was just like, I just have to say it. And now I say it way more often and faster because life has taught me a lot. And I'm like, man, I mean, if I have some regrets, it's the fact that I didn't maybe speak up faster when someone was trying to put me in a box. But it's okay. It's all good because it's a learning journey, right? Recognizing that this is a journey that we're on and there are various facets to it. The other piece about this that I always want to make sure people understand, especially when you're seeking to work and to operate within your zone of genius, is that greater visibility does not equate to greater impact. Now, are there people who are, very visible and have great impact? Sure, of course, right? They're the folks that we learn about first and foremost when it comes to history and culture and leaders and all of that. But there are so many more people that we don't learn about until long past their time has expired. And we see that those opportunities exist every day as we literally are living history. I love um, biographies. I've always been a biography buff. I would, since I was a kid, I would stack them up and I would read because I was fascinated by people and what drove them to be successful, to be leaders, whatever it is they do. I was always fascinated by that and still am. And I think that's where some of the work that I do comes to be because I'm very interested in the story and making sure to get the story out. And so that said, some of the most interesting people to me are not the ones whose name is on the book. It's the person who was there for them all along the way. Perfect example. Perfect example. Just watched recently. Just watched the Netflix docu series on Gordon Ramsay. Right, I find him fascinating. It was very fascinating to learn some details about his life and how he operates and with his family, all that. So the subject matter and the subject was fantastic. And then here's this person whose name I can't even remember. I'd have to go look it up. But it's the gentleman who's been with him from day one. who started off as his first maitre d' and has been with him through all of the ups and downs and still works with him and serves with him at a higher level today as his ambassador for high level service and what it looks like so that that is uniform across all of his restaurants. That person right there absolutely fascinates me. I want to know more about him, right? Because here's the thing, the visible person is Gordon Ramsay. The person behind Gordon Ramsay who's helping him to establish that level of visibility, but doesn't have the visibility per se, but has just as great an impact because of what he's contributing to that dynasty. The maitre d', perfect example. And so I always like to go look for those people because they have a completely, not always, but a different set of skills. There's something else they bring to the conversation that's not being acknowledged right away, but it does not mean that their skill set and what they bring to the conversation does not matter. It absolutely does. But just because someone does or does not have visibility does not mean that their impact is lesser. Not at all, right? And so I want to remind you of that today because right now today we could be walking along and feeling like, well, this does not really matter. I need all this. No, go do you. What is the phrase? Go do you, boo. Go do your thing. Don't worry about all of that other stuff because people will always say, oh, you got to worry about this and you got to focus on that. Which gets me to point 3, which is do not let comparisonitis block your genius. Do not let it undermine your genius. Do not allow other people to utilize comparisons to block and undermine your genius. That is an easy, easy thing to get tripped up over and to lose your way on. Been there, done that. Do not fall for it. And if you do, come to your senses quickly and get back on the right path, right? Because it is so easy to say, well, they're doing X and why am I not doing as much? Because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's behind that story for real. You don't know whether they had to sell their soul to have that quote success. That's one of the biggest things that I've recognized down through the years with my own career, which is there would be times when, even when I was lobbying and doing legislative work, and I'm like, man, I could have been doing X. And then I literally will hear myself say immediately, but I was never willing to sell my soul to do that work. This was not. I cared about doing good work. Yes, I'd like to get paid nicely for it and be compensated for it, but I'm not going to sell my soul. And so on the surface, and at some points in time, it looked like I wasn't, quote, as successful, but I also know that my integrity was intact. And since that kind of matters to me because I care about my legacy, then I'm gonna let that rest of that go. That is a part of the growth journey, right? So wherever that comparison stuff, shows up, don't let it get you off track. Tell someone, thank you very much for that, but that's not the path that I'm on. I've had to tell people that. Thank you so much. That's not the path I'm on. Or sometimes you can say, thank you very much. I've already done that. I'm going a different direction now. That'll that'll quiet a few critics. You're like, I've already been there, already done that. And I have to remind myself, even today, when I would be doing, some of this board service. And it's literally the reason why I've shifted some of the work that I do out in the community because people would still come to me because they're like, oh, and yes, I could do it. I am very good at doing turnarounds and at providing depth and fixing situations. And I've already done that a lot. And so recognizing that I don't have to continue to do that just because I'm really good at it, that is a lot of growth. That's a lot of, pushing the ego aside and recognizing, yes, I am excellent at that work, but I am genius at this other. And that's where I'm trying to focus my efforts. All right. The last thing just comes from one of my favorite poems, Robert Frost poem. And it's basically take the unbeaten path, y'all. Um, Sometimes it's just what we have to do. If you really want to get to another level, because here's the other thing, there are a lot of people that are on the highway to mediocrity. There are fewer people, but still a lot of people who are on, a side road to excellence. But there are very few who are in the side, off on the side, cutting down the brush, making a way to genius, to what their genius is. And I'm going to encourage you to recognize when you're reaching that point of I'm not on the highway to mediocrity anymore. I'm I have been on this road, side road to excellence, but now I'm ready to move at a whole other level, and there are not going to be a lot of people there. And acknowledging that and being okay with that, because that's the big piece. Being okay with being off the beaten path and knowing it and saying, let's go anyways. And here's the thing, you don't have to be on by yourself in that, right? Because it's going to like, well, if there's not people, guess what? There are other people who are operating in their levels of genius or seeking to do so and to move at a whole new level in different fields. But that's your common denominator, right? Is you are looking to do things in a different way within your industry, within your areas, whatever it might be. Those are the people to look for, right? I always say, and I've learned for myself, that when they say when you really want to learn and get to the next level, don't be the big fish in the pond. Maybe you want to be the small fish in a big pond, because now you've got to go learn from somebody else how to become a bigger fish. I know, me and all these horrible analogies, but you get what I'm saying. Sometimes you get to the point and you're perfectly happy with being the person in a smaller area, and that's fine. That's your choice. And if you're really looking to take things to a new level, that may mean you're not the smartest person in the room anymore. You may need to enter some new rooms where you can sit and do a lot of learning at the feet of people who may have done some of the things you want to do, or even if they haven't done the exact thing, they have pushed the envelope in their fields and in their areas, and you can learn from those experiences. Man, I love this. I love this kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to share there. Think about what it looks like as you are developing your business, developing your career, when you're seeking to be at new levels, um, in all of those ways. What does it look like for you to go from level A to B and level B to C, right? And what are the things you're going to have to lose along the way? And who are the new people or things you're going to bring up with you? Because trust me, you will need to release some people and gain some new people. It's just the way. It's the way things are. And it'll be okay. It will be okay. All right, there we are. Thank you once again. My name is Patricia. So glad to have you here and join me. Please, please make sure to hit like and subscribe to push this out to more folks. And dare I ask you to share it as well, because we're stronger together when we don't gatekeep good content, but we share it out. I'm a huge advocate for sharing it because if I can learn something from someone else, um, I'm going, and that's going to be impactful to their growth. I'm here for it, right? I'm here for that. So I encourage you to do that. Meanwhile, I hope that you will remember to continue to celebrate who you are and all the things that you do, and to do it every day because you deserve it. All right, take care.